WTMA.
Expert news and views on the Lowcountry real estate scene. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back to the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. We're finishing our discussion here about what causes a house not to sell. You know, so many of these homes are sitting on the market, and I mentioned a little earlier that you're about to see all this inventory kind of disappear from the market. It's because a lot of these listing agreements signed between a seller and a listing agent are written to expire on December 31st. And so if you're a buyer and you're listening, just because they've disappeared from the market doesn't mean they won't still sell their house. But if you don't know where to look and how to find them, then, you know, buyers kind of feel like they're being forced to wait until the spring, even if you want to buy something right now. So there's some great opportunities for buyers with these sellers that have tried selling, some of them all year, and they haven't sold, and they're irritated, and they don't understand why. They don't understand why their home hasn't sold. Sometimes their real estate agents don't either. So there are some opportunities for buyers to take advantage of that. On the flip side, sellers that are listening, if you tried selling your house this year and it didn't sell, and you're being coached or led to believe that you have to wait until March or April because that's when buyers come back, I'm here to tell you that that is wrong. We are selling properties this month right now. I mean, activity is actually pretty crazy. And we're seeing a bunch of agents and holiday parties and talking to lenders and attorneys, and we're all kind of getting together and socializing. Everybody's pretty busy right now, or at least the people that are at the top of the market. The people that aren't busy, frankly, are just choosing not to be busy because they want some time off. They deserve it. It's all good. Folks like me, I'm gonna pick up a bunch of market share this time of year because I work hard. Of course, I take time off and I enjoy my family and the holidays and all that fun stuff, but just because it's December 21st doesn't mean that I'm not going to work just as hard as any other day of the week. But it kind of revolves around this last segment that I wanted to talk about, which is motivation. Selling your house. Because here's the reality, and we talked a little earlier this show about how to deal with people when they become emotionally charged, when emotion just takes over the decision-making process and they don't act rationally. Because it happens. I mean, it happens to all of us in different phases and segments of our life. But when it happens during the course of a real estate negotiation or contract, then it can have some pretty negative effects. I mean, yes, there are some real damages and money attached to this, depending upon how far you let it go. But one of the things that sellers will say is, hey, I don't need to sell this house. We don't need to sell. And it's almost like this defense mechanism that sellers say as a way of either proactively or reactively saying, hey, don't tell me a price that's lower than what I want to hear, because just so you know, I don't need to sell my house. And I'm not going to be put into a position where, I'm selling it for less than what I think it's worth. And that's totally their prerogative. And I absolutely understand it. And I have heard that line more times than I can count. But the reality is, just because you're unmotivated to sell doesn't mean you're able to sell it for more money or to sell it for what you want. The market's going to determine what your home is worth. A buyer is going to determine what your home is worth. And if you're not willing to accept what the market will bear, then you will be one of those outliers that sits on the market. Maybe you get a few spillover showings because buyers are in the area or they're looking at that price range and saying, hey, might as well look at this one too. But in effect, what you're almost doing is helping the other properties that are more aggressively positioned sell before you. And then that then becomes the trend, is that these homes that are slightly underpriced are selling. That becomes the market and you become overpriced. Well, you already are, but now it's proven. And so that's part of the challenge that we have in dealing with some of these sellers that have been on the market, is that either the agent just didn't have the backbone to tell the person, the seller, what that home was worth and what was actually going to cause it to sell, or there were some things that they really should have considered doing to the house, or frankly the marketing just wasn't there. They were hoping that an agent would bring their buyer by and that the buyer would fall in love with it and make an offer, and it just didn't happen. So there are all these different areas in which things can go wrong that cause a home to sit on the market rather than sell. But motivation is very rarely talked about, because I could have a fantastic marketing plan and your home could be in move-in condition, but if it's not priced appropriately because you're not motivated to sell it, then we really are just hoping and praying that somebody comes along and is willing to offer you what you want in order to buy the house. And I'm just here to tell you that that is very, very rare, and it's becoming even more rare as our market continues to shift. So just something to be wary of. If you're one of those folks that's had their home on the market and it hasn't sold, it's easy for agents to be assigned the blame because in 99.9% of the cases, it's their fault. And if they're being a true professional, regardless of the price or the conditioning or the marketing or your motivation, it's their responsibility to tell you the impact of your decisions, the impact that the price is going to have on the marketing, or that the condition is going to have on the marketing, or that your motivation is going to have on the overall process. All these things need to be out and in the open and discussed and understood so that you have reasonable expectations. The challenge is, again, and I'm just going to finish this with because I don't have time to go to these myths. I went a little long-winded on these last few segments, but it's something I'm really passionate about. I see so many sellers that want to sell their house and they just don't understand why it hasn't sold. And part of it is because agents don't have the tools or the systems or the budget or the manpower or the motivation to sell at a high level. Or, yes, sometimes sellers want an unreasonable amount of money, or they're unwilling to fix things in their home that buyers are unwilling to pay for at that current price or in that current market. And the conversations just aren't being had because the agent would rather keep the listing, keep the sign in the yard, keep a marketing opportunity to say, hey, I've got a listing. I do business in this area. If buyers want to work with an agent in this area, I'm the person. Or hopefully they get buyer leads and they sell them something else, and it just doesn't work out for the seller. So if you think that's you, or if you just want to get it right the first time, give me a call, 843-400-8009. That's 400-8009. Or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. Thanks, Charleston, and have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9.